During Revenge of the Sith, we saw Anakin's eyes turn from blue to Sith yellow on Mustafar. This was well after his atrocities at the Jedi Temple against his former friends, masters, and the younglings. The pure evil he manifested through his actions were putrid enough to bring the powers of the dark side through, resulting in new unlocked abilities fit for a true Sith Lord. So, with these powers and new eyes, why didn't Anakin have them while fighting Kenobi as he did after slaughtering the Separatists? So this video is going to be mostly a theory, as there's no canon evidence as to why this is the case, and if they ever do release that kind of info, then best be sure I'm going to talk about it and make a video. But for now, all I can use are, well, my ideas and theories. So my theory for this is that once he saw Padme's ship land, his hatred was filled with love and his eyes reverted back to their normal blue, right? Because just a moment before, when he was slaughtering the Separatists, they were Sith yellow and orange. Now, I almost think of Sith eyes like turning Super Saiyan, so when the hair isn't blonde anymore, then you aren't in your super high-powered state. Now, of course, it's very tough to compare Dragon Ball Z and Star Wars in terms of power levels and, such, but I believe the theory makes sense, at least in my head it does. His adoration for Padme was so strong that even after killing everyone at the Jedi Temple and the Separatists, he was full of affection and care for his wife. Now, when Obi-Wan showed up, I think it would have made sense if his eyes changed back to Sith yellow, his rage personified by his eyes changing colors again. The reason they don't, in my opinion, is because of his love for Obi-Wan as well. There is much conflict within him at this point. He's not fully given in to the dark side. And I think this is something that we'll see in the Kenobi show as well, because 10 years after Revenge of the Sith is, this is Vader pretty far into the dark side, but it's still not fully into the darkness that we know Vader as, in Rogue One, for example, where he's completely in the dark side. And I feel like as Vader's story progresses, he only falls more and more into the darkness as he gets older. However, once he meets Luke, things start to really change. And once he understands that Luke is Anakin's son, then he starts to really become conflicted, and the Anakin starts to come out once again. Until, of course, we see him make a 180 in Return of the Jedi when Anakin comes out and Vader is destroyed. So that sliver of care for his mentor and brother was what was conflicting him, and Anakin couldn't fully dip back into the darkness for his master. Even in his rage, he wasn't fully giving himself over to the dark side like he had against the Separatists after leaving the Jedi Temple in flames. At this point, Anakin was dwindling like a flame, trying to burn in a heavy storm. The darker it became, the more the light could be seen, and this proved true for Anakin in this moment. The more his dark side powers grew, the more visible the Anakin within could be, even down to an ember. I believe once Anakin lost to Obi-Wan, he was full of pain and hatred for what Obi-Wan had done to him, and that's when his eyes changed back to their Sith yellow. I think had Anakin been able to fully let go of his feelings for Obi-Wan in the light side, as his friend and former master, he would have been able to defeat him. I also believe, even had the high ground posed such a threat, had Anakin not been stricken with conflict and hubris, and been as full of rage as when he killed the Separatists, he would have had a better chance defeating Kenobi. When fighting the Separatists, or rather killing them, I'm sure Anakin was thinking of Padme even more than normal, more likely blaming the Separatists for their assassination attempts on Padme's life, Geonosis, Coruscant, and so on. Instead of blaming Palpatine himself, which he should have been doing, he was, blaming them and thinking that this was going to allow him to save his wife, to give him the powers that he needed. I believe it would have been a good moment to show this rage exemplified through his eyes changing color once he saw Kenobi atop the ramp to Padme's ship. I always questioned why this wasn't so, and his eyes remained blue until he was, cut in half, until the fight was over. My theory for the reasons behind this is that he wasn't drawing on the full powers of the dark side and of hatred to fight Kenobi. He was still very conflicted. And we can also see this when he tries to explain to Kenobi when he's talking about how he sees through the lies of the Jedi, and that from his point of view, the Jedi are evil. Like, in that moment, it almost seems to me that there could be a possible different outcome that could have come from this if Obi-Wan had just retracted his lightsaber and said, hey, you know what? You're right. Maybe the Jedi are evil. And I think Anakin would have not killed him. I don't think Anakin was so far into the dark side yet at that point, and I believe this is partially the reason for his failure, as well as for his eyes not changing color. There was no pain or hatred to draw upon. It was merely just anger, but it wasn't true Sith hatred and fear and pain and darkness that he later drawed upon forever. My question always was, why didn't his eyes change color when Obi-Wan was atop the ship? And I believe it's because he wasn't drawing on the full powers of the dark side and of hatred towards Kenobi. Whereas when he was sliced in half, he was drawing on everything he could just to stay alive, mixed with his now hatred of Kenobi even more for what he had just done. And this pushed him over the edge and turned him, so-called Super Saiyan, Star Wars style. So this tells me that Anakin was only fighting at a lesser power level than his true potential, not to mention that he was also new to the dark side, so he was still getting used to his new powers and unlocking new abilities that he didn't know could be achieved yet. I think if Anakin had been using the full depths of the darkness to power his fight against his former Jedi Master, then he would have had a better chance before faltering to his final strike. What do you think? Do you agree? I also believe that this kind of logic can be used when we connect it to Sidious, who in fighting Mace Windu concealed his true powers to lure Anakin in. He only had Sith eyes after frying himself, with his own lightning, which required him to request more power from the Force and the dark side, which resulted in his eyes changing color, and thus fully tapping into the dark side before unleashing unlimited power. Now I know George said that Mace did win, but there has been some discrepancy behind that. And of course, when I asked Ian McDiarmid in person, he said that Palpatine did lose on purpose. Now, of course, George's word always stands, so I'm going to let you guys be the judge of that. But it almost seems like the way that scene was shot was that Palpatine was waiting for that moment the whole time. Now, Count Dooku, and I'm going to make a video on this just by itself eventually, he never fully tapped in the dark side. His actions were questionable, but he believed they were noble. His mindset was no different when he was a Jedi as to when he was a Sith. I mean, he believed he was using the Force for nobility, and as a Sith, he believed the same thing. He felt the Jedi became disillusioned, and they weren't just fighting for peace anymore, rather meddling too deeply into politics. However, he never truly hated anyone like Maul or Vader or Sidious did. His Sith eyes never came to be, which I'm going to go more into depth on in another video sometime. I believe had Sidious used the full powers of the dark side at the start, then he would have defeated Mace Windu, as I believe he always did. Had Anakin used the full extent of darkness and tapped into the fiery rage within his soul to kill Kenobi, then I believe he would have. Even at the least, he would have moved faster than he already was while fighting Obi-Wan, and defeated him, or jumped higher towards the high ground to not get chopped in bits, if it even got down there. So this is my theory as to why Anakin didn't have Sith eyes while fighting Obi-Wan. It's something I always wondered as a kid, and it's a theory that I've always had that, he wasn't really using his full powers of the dark side to defeat him. And had he been, then things might be very different in the Star Wars galaxy today. It might be like that Revenge of the Sith alternate ending scene where Anakin kills Sidious and, goes on to be the Emperor. But I guess we'll never know. I want to know what you guys think about this in the comments below. Do you think Anakin was truly using the powers of the dark side as much as he knew at that moment? Or do you think he just wasn't really, and he was just totally conflicted with who he was to who he is becoming, and Obi-Wan before him, and what he just did to Padme and all this stuff? I'm wondering if he wasn't really using everything that he could have been. And maybe this is why Sidious always wanted Anakin to be defeated, to be killed by Vader. Because as long as Anakin was alive, Vader couldn't. Thanks for watching this video. Let me know what you think about it, and leave a like if you enjoyed it. Catch you all in the next video. Until then, remember, the Force will be with you, always.